maximum number. Jack, you are the biggest star we've ever had. But maybe it's the topic too. So Jack, first I want to thank you for your time. They didn't call in to listen to me. A lot of consternation, a lot of fear, a lot of misinformation, and a lot of the sky is falling. So how about if we just go straight to the doctor, you give us the diagnosis, and then how about following up with a prescription?
Wow, we got enough metaphors in there. Okay.
Oh, geez, yeah.
We'll get started. First off, I'm only talking about agents. This is not, my comments are not about marketing companies. I don't reflect what's going to happen to insurance companies or anybody else. This is just about agents. And I'm going to go to my close. My close is, this ain't going to happen. Not for agents. The Department of Labor rules that affect agents and set up the best interest contract exemption standards will not go into effect. It's not going to happen. Shoot off fireworks. Everything will be pretty much normal next April. The second point is none of this applies this year. None of this stuff applies. You can keep on selling like you've been selling. You're under the same suitability standards you were. Nothing has changed. Keep selling. And the last point is, if the worst case happened and this went into effect, this does not affect non-qualified annuities. Non-qualified annuities, which represent roughly half the business, are in no way impacted directly by the DOL rule. It only applies to qualified annuities, which effectively means IRAs. If it's not an IRA annuity, the rules do not apply. You're under the same old rules, same old contracts, same old suitability. So that's the biggest point. What does it say? If you look at the rules, there's two different rules. If it's a fixed rate annuity, an immediate annuity, or a deferred income annuity, you fall under the prohibited transaction exemption 84-24. What that says is you can still get a commission on any of these annuities if you admit that you are a fiduciary, if you show in writing the commission you're going to earn, plus any overrides the marketing company is getting. You disclose any conflicts of interest. You basically show them the typical disclosure you've been using for years, which shows the fees and surrender charges, and the annuity buyer signs off. The only point this really adds to it is you must keep the records for 6 years. Because the fifth point on my sheet is the transaction must be on the same terms to this person as you'd be offering the annuity to another person. And of course that's true because if you're offering a product, it's the same product whether it's in buyer A, B, or C. So the only real change you would have next year going forward for a MIGA or an immediate annuity or a DIA is you'd have to disclose the commission. That's it. That's the only change. Fixed index annuities, that's a little different. You have to admit you're a fiduciary. You have to show the commission. You must disclose the conflicts of interest. The buyer still signs off on the disclosure, mentioning the surrender charges and any fees and all that stuff. And you need to adhere to impartial conduct standards that put the client's best interests first, and you fall under the prudent man theory of law, which essentially says that somebody else acting in your capacity would make the same decision. The other thing they threw in there, I'm not sure who won this one, is if the annuity buyer agrees, if they do sue you, you can make it limited to only actual damages and not punitive. That applies to all index annuities in qualified plans. It's the best interest contract exemption, and it must be essentially what a prudent person would have done in the same situation. None of this stuff applies to annuities that are already in force after April 10th, 2017, which is when most of this stuff goes into effect. If you sold an annuity this year and the person is putting ongoing premiums into it, that still falls under the old suitability. It does not fall under the new fiduciary requirements. If you're getting a trailing commission from an existing annuity sold prior to 10 April 2017, none of that is affected by the new rules. You still get the same commission. You're still treated as a suitable sale as opposed to a fiduciary under the rules. So none of that changes. However, if there is a new revision to the contract, the person that's putting in $100 a month increases to $200 a month, or a person that bought a flexible premium annuity with no intention of putting more money in and then puts in an additional lump sum out of the blue after 10 April 2017, that would fall under the fiduciary rules. But any annuities in place are not affected. What's the big difference between BIC and 8424? It's how much liability you have. On both cases, you must act as a fiduciary. The big difference is under BIC, it's the best interest fiduciary, which means the liability is wrapped up. Under 8424, essentially, as long as you sell an annuity that is approved by your carrier and approved by your state, you're fine. You don't have any additional liability after you said, I am a fiduciary, here's what my commission was. And you're pretty well covered. If you sell an index annuity in a qualified plan, you fall under BIC, which means you also could have to prove that the annuity you sold was in the best interest. And that makes this thing really ugly, because you could have people coming back to you and second guessing you. That's what the plaintiff's bar loves about this. As an agent, you probably are not going to get sued because agents do not have deep pockets. What this would affect would be marketing companies and insurance carriers. That's where the lawsuits would head. Your liability wouldn't change a heck of a lot, except that your errors and omission insurance would go up. The DOL estimated that E&O premiums would go up by 10% if they pass this rule. Based on some checking I did, your E&O premium would increase somewhere between 1.5 to 3 times bigger than it is today. That's the problem with being a fiduciary instead of falling under suitability. But everything else is pretty much the same. You still collect a commission under any of these different scenarios. The question will be, if this went into effect, who you'd be collecting that commission from. It's still coming from the insurance company initially, but the way the law is written, it's conceivable that a marketing company would not be involved, which means you'd either have to collect this commission from a broker-dealer through a registered investment advisory or as a captive agent of the carrier. You still collect the commission, but you may not go through a marketing company. The way the rule is set up at present is marketing organizations are not covered explicitly. They would have to petition the DOL for permission to be in the commission stream. And nobody knows how that's going to turn out. But as a direct agent, you still collect a commission from selling the product. That part does not change. If you get deeper into the whole DOL rule, it's really messy for people at the marketing organization and insurance company level. Less so for the agent. Life does not change that much, except for higher E&O costs. And the fact that you might have to switch your the way you run your business through, but you can still talk to consumers. My firm belief is this is not going to happen. The BIC's not going to happen. The prohibited transaction 8424 is very likely not going to happen because federal law under the Unfunded Mandates Reform Act says that federal agencies must determine the economic impact on everybody involved when they pass a new rule. They did do this when they looked at the rule, how it would impact broker-dealers. They looked how it would impact investment advisors. They did not look how it would impact marketing organizations, and they did not look how it would impact independent agents. They completely ignored that section of the market, and they ignored basically $35 billion worth of current sales. Based on that alone, the courts should require the DOL to go back to the drawing board, have to do this all over again. And if they go back and have to start it all over again, it's not going to pass a second time because the main architect behind this bill will be retired. So it's not, I don't think it's going to happen. If it does happen, agents will survive for another day. And that's all I've got at the moment.
Well, Jack, this is Ray, and first of all, I always appreciate the succinct way that you bring this out, and we've talked about this at great length. I do have questions that have been asked of me by agents, and I thought rather than have everyone call in, I would start giving you some of the questions that have been asked of me. We talk about non-FIAs. If this rule did go through as is, what about a 5, a 7, or a 10-year MIGA with DLWB? Where does that fit in qualified money?
That should be covered under the 8424, which means it would be, you wouldn't have to prove it's the best product, it would just be a product. It would simply be another annuity.
Okay. As we know, I'm not going to mention any insurance company names here, many that we've been speaking with, and some that have gone very public. But one of the leaders in the FIA marketplace has already said, if this would be the case, yeah, they would sell their FIAs in non-qualified, but they would go with a traditional fixed deferred annuity with the GLWB in the qualified marketplace. And my thought is, Jack, and I would like to get your thoughts on this, if liability were to rest all the way up to the insurance company, why would an insurance company want to sell an index annuity in qualified plans with all the potential liability? Your thoughts?
And that's the concern you do have. Unless the insurance company can gain more control over the agent or divest themselves of the liability, it doesn't make sense for them to do that. I mean, you're going to see a lot of carriers, I'll try that again. You could see carriers going to a broker-dealer and saying, we're only going to do business through banks and broker-dealers because they will take care of our liability by making sure that this is a fiduciary sale. You could also have captive agencies start up again, or I should say grow and become bigger.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then I think they have to figure out where the IMO fits into the equation today, because not being the financial institution, so to speak, and having to petition, the liability is so strong, is so severe for an IMO that as I've been talking to my very friendly IMOs around the country, the day, I think, of the agent flipping business to 5 or 6 or 7 different IMOs is going to go the way of the Edsel because of liability. There's going to have to be stronger relationships with whatever the IMO or the supervisory group would be. Would you agree with that?
I would, yeah, 100%. If this went into effect, an independent agent would be independent, but they would essentially work for one IMO.
Right. Do you see, I'm going to go back to this concept that we talked earlier and that some of the other carriers have come out in print saying that they would go with a traditional fixed annuity with a GLWB. And I've looked at every angle, and I've talked to you and to some attorneys involved with this. linking it to anything like old pass-through annuities where you would link it to a company's bond portfolio or even make it like a dividend, those things don't seem to work the way it's written right now. It appears to me that it really kind of just has to be almost like a MIGA with the GLWB. Is that the way you read it, Jack?
I'm not close enough to be that definitive, but they're really funny the way the law spells out index. It makes it essentially anything except a fixed rate annuity with a guarantee. So yeah, it's very limited.
Yeah. So there might even be wiggle room there. And as our listeners are on, I want to keep going back to your last slide, final outcome, we win, DOL loses. You know, Jack, I'm fortunate enough, I've got my Congress lady has her office here in Indiana in our building. And a few weeks ago, I was able to speak with the regional office for the Department of Labor, which is really the Employee Benefits Security Administration, here in Indianapolis with about 10 other people, and we questioned the lady on this, and this was before the final ruling came out. And I think what really gave me pause is when she said, "Ray, I know no more than you do." And I did ask if she was the sheriff, and she said, "Yes, we are the sheriff." And I said, "But you're also the sheriff on the 401k that we have here at the Ohlson Group and even our health insurance plan through Anthem." "Yes, I am." I said, "If you had to go out and be the sheriff with all of the people that have plans that fall under your purview, how often could you contact these people or see them?" She said, "I could probably see everybody once every 10 years. So let's talk about this, if you don't mind, for a second, Jack. Let's say if this thing did go through. I asked her, "You're the sheriff," and I said, and then Perez is the big town marshal, and then President Obama and Elizabeth Warren, they're basically the ones that are steering the boat. Who do we report to? I mean, how would this work out if somebody got sent to DOL jail? I mean, do they have a plan to how they're going to supervise this?
Yes, they've addressed that. They're going to supervise this through lawsuits. They figure the trial lawyers will figure out how it's all supposed to work.
Okay. And on that note, under the BICE, if someone put $100,000 into an annuity and it was felt that the advisor, the agent, the registered rep, whoever did not act in the best interest as a fiduciary, what would be the maximum fine of that $100,000 transaction?
Well, there is no fine. They don't have the mechanism set up. This would be done under legal liability after you lost the lawsuit.
Okay. So anyone that would think that just a 10% increase in E&O coverage, I don't think they're being, or in premiums, I just don't think that is very realistic.
No.
Okay, and I had one other question that was down here. So let's, I'm going to go back to your final slide, and then before we wrap things up, final outcome, we win, DOL loses. But let's just say we win because this thing is really watered down. Based on your experience in the financial services industry, you know, having owned a BD, run a BD, been a marketing VP with an insurance company, and I mean, you've seen both sides of this. Don't you think that with all the press and with access to information, that people that will work in the qualified marketplace had better make sure that they've got the resume polished and are really dealing now with a consumer that will know much more about this than they ever did before. I'm not sure if I'm making myself clear, but don't you think the spotlight will still be on qualified money regardless?
Yes, this, well, annuities and all financial products.
Right.
This is not a game changer, but it's a progressive nature of the business. The annuity business has been marching towards a securities regulatory point of view or supervisory aspect for the last decade. And it just continues on that march. The agents are going to be treated like registered reps and advisors, even if without this. This just speeds up the process.
And I guess my final question, and you led right into it, thank you. Let's talk registered investment advisors, RIAs, IARs. To me, after looking at this, yes, I mean, you could be in that marketplace, but it is not exactly a comfortable spot either, because you become the financial office, the financial institution, as well as the writer of the business. So do you think being an RIA or an IAR is an answer to the problem?
No, unless your goal is to become an investment advisor. If your goal is to sell annuities, then becoming an investment advisor does not help you, because you're supposed to do more than just sell annuities. So there has to be another choice out there. And I don't know what that is at the moment.
I don't know either, and thank you. And that is the way that I read this too. Jack, any final comment that you would like to make here before we start wrapping this up?
Yeah, quit reading the newspapers. There's nothing you can do at the moment. This is going to be worked out in the courts. We might have a shot in the fall with a legislative political approach, but at the moment there's nothing you can do as an agent. So the best thing that can really be done is to try to get it out of your head so you can go back and make a living. None of this stuff applies this year. If the worst case happened and it went into effect, we're talking a year from now. Keep selling.
Well, Jack, and that's exactly right. And for as long as I've been in this business, and so many listeners on the phone, because we do have an aging database, advisor base out there today, this isn't the first time, and it won't be the last. There have been a lot of challenges, but this is the most resilient industry in the world. And I think the thing that makes this very positive for me is with our public out there, baby boomers, people pre-retirees or in retirement, they want and need what we have to offer. What a tremendous position to be in. What a tremendous profession, industry, when we have the products that Americans need and want, and we have a dwindling agent base, which means less competition for all the people on the line today. We will prevail. We will invent a better mousetrap, and that's the job of us here too, to try to keep everyone informed. And we're going to start backing off a lot of our DOL reports that we put in the Ohlson report every Monday. We're going to give you things that we think might be new and newsworthy. But as Jack said, I've been speaking to elected officials, as many people out there have been. There isn't a whole heck of a lot that we can do right now other than wait for many of the groups that have talked about litigation to get it filed, put a stick in the spokes, and let's get this thing changed. If anyone has questions, and I'm sure you do, that haven't been answered, feel free to email us at info@ohlsongroup.com, info@ohlsongroup.com, or give one of the marketing consultants a call at 877-844-0900. That's 847-844-0900. And we'll just get the questions to the doctor and get the prescription, and we will be on our way. First of all, thank you, Dr. Jack. Always a pleasure. I owe you a malted milk for this one. And ladies and gentlemen, thanks for spending the time. Thank you for your business. I wish you the best of luck. We will prevail. And as Jack was saying, or maybe to paraphrase, get out there and sell like hell. Let's go. Thanks. Have a great rest of the day and a great rest of the week. Goodbye.